You're operating illegal equipment on HOA property. Catherine Blackwell's scream cut through the Montana morning like a blade. Two sheriff's deputies stood behind her at my gate. Lights flashing. I'm calling the police to have you arrested for trespassing. I look down at the wrench in my hand. Then at the irrigation valve my grandfather installed in 1947 on MY land. Catherine, this is private property? You have no authority here. Wrong. She shoved her phone in my face. Recording. I have 7 documented violations. You're creating hazardous water conditions that threaten the entire community. The HOA has jurisdiction over this lake. And you will comply, or face criminal charges. Behind her, Deputy Martinez shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, Mr. Harrison says this is his property. He's lying, Catherine spat. The shoreline belongs to Ridgemont Estates. I have the maps to prove it. That's when I pulled the folder from my truck. The one with her falsified boundary documents. The one showing she'd filed fake maps with the county to steal my lake. Deputies. I said quietly, she's not reporting a violation. She's trying to steal 77 years of my family's water rights using forged county records. I opened the folder. Catherine's face went white. In Montana, I continued. That's called fraud. The silence that followed told me everything. Catherine Blackwell had just realized I knew exactly what she'd been planning, and her perfectly constructed lie was about to collapse in front of the very deputies she'd called to intimidate me. The nightmare had started exactly 11 days earlier. On the second Monday of December 2024, when I walked out to check the irrigation valve at the northern edge of Whitetail Lake and found deputies waiting at my gate, not because I'd done anything wrong, the valve maintenance was routine. Something I'd done every winter for the past 32 years since inheriting the ranch from my father, but because someone had called them with a complaint that sounded official enough to require a response, heavy equipment operation without authorization. Deputy Martinez had explained, his tone suggesting he knew the complaint was questionable. Hazardous water flow activity affecting community safety. I'd walked him down to the valve, shown him the hand tools, explained the maintenance schedule that predated the Ridgemont Estates development by 6 decades. He'd nodded, marked it as unfounded, and driven away. Simple misunderstanding. I'd thought, someone new to the area who didn't understand ranch operations. But standing there watching his cruiser disappear up the gravel road, I'd noticed Catherine Blackwell lingering near the property line, staring at the lake like she was appraising something valuable. That should have been my first warning. The first violation notice arrived the next morning, taped to my mailbox like a ransom note. Unsafe shoreline activity identified. Level 2 hazard. Cease operations immediately pending HOA review. No signature beyond the printed HOA letterhead. No photographic evidence. No specific description of what unsafe activity meant. I'd called the HOA office. Spoken to a nervous secretary named Linda, who'd stammered something about board directives and community safety protocols before promising someone would call me back. No one did. The second notice appeared 2 days later. Unauthorized pump noise disturbing residents. I hadn't run the pump. The third notice claimed dangerous water flow structures creating liability risks. The fourth accused me of industrial drainage affecting community water table. All of them vague. All of them technically worded. All of them completely false. By day 7, I had 7 violation notices stacked on my kitchen table, each one referencing different subsections of HOA covenants that shouldn't apply to property. The HOA didn't govern. Someone was building a paper trail, and they were doing it fast. My daughter Emma noticed the change first. At 14, she had that teenager's sensitivity to adult tension that manifests as worried silence. "Dad, why do we keep getting letters from the HOA?" she'd asked. Watching me read the latest accusation, "Because someone's confused about property boundaries," I'd said, but the answer felt hollow even as I spoke it. My son Daniel, 2 years older and already planning to study engineering like his grandfather, had been more direct. "Are they trying to make us leave?" The question hit harder than it should have because some part of me had already started wondering the same thing, but I'd pushed the thought aside, focused on the immediate problem of responding to false allegations, and told myself this was just bureaucratic confusion that would resolve itself once the HOA realized their mistake. I was wrong. By day 10, neighbors were whispering. I heard it at the feed store in town, 2 men discussing that situation at the Harrison Ranch and falling silent when they saw me. The rumors had spread faster than the actual violations. Walter's operating dangerous equipment. His lake work is unstable. The county might shut him down for safety reasons. The narrative was being written before I'd even understood someone was holding the pen. That's when I started paying attention to Catherine Blackwell's movements. She appeared at the ridge above my property 3 times in 4 days. Always with her phone held up like she was documenting evidence, not hiding her surveillance, but making sure I saw her watching. The message was clear. She wanted me to know I was being monitored, cataloged, judged. But why the Ridgemont Estates development sat a 1/4 mile from my ranch boundary, built 8 years ago on what used to be grazing land? The HOA governed their subdivision manicured lawns, strict architectural guidelines, aggressive enforcement of paint colors and mailbox styles. But my ranch predated their development by 7 decades. My water rights were registered in 1947. My property boundaries were surveyed and recorded long before Catherine Blackwell was born. So why was she acting like she had authority over land she'd never owned? The answer came from an unexpected source: Bill Henderson, my nearest neighbor whose property bordered mine to the east, stopped by on day 11 with information that changed everything. "Walter, I need to tell you something," he said, standing uncomfortable on my porch. "Catherine Blackwell approached me 2 weeks ago, asked if I'd noticed changes in your lake levels. Said the HOA was concerned about shoreline stability affecting property values." "What did you tell her?" I asked. "That your lake has been stable for 70 years and doesn't affect anything beyond your property line." He paused. But then she asked something strange. She wanted to know if I'd support HOA jurisdiction over expandable water territory for community safety purposes. The phrase hit me like cold water. Expandable territory. Bill nodded grimly. That's the exact phrase she used. Like your lake was somehow up for grabs if they could make a safety argument. After Bill left, I stood at the water's edge where my grandfather had built the original dam in 1947, creating Whitetail Lake from a seasonal creek that had flowed through this valley since before anyone kept records. The lake stretched across 22 acres of my property, fed by mountain runoff and maintained by the irrigation system 3 generations of my family had built and maintained, and now someone wanted to claim it wasn't mine. That evening, my father shuffled out from the small guest cabin where he lived since my mother passed. His mind wandered more often these days, early-stage dementia that came and went like a faulty radio signal. But sometimes, in moments of unexpected clarity, he saw patterns Others missed. "They're testing you," he said, staring at the ridge where Catherine had been standing with her phone earlier. "People like that always start small. File complaints. Create confusion. Build a story. Then they claim what they were testing all along." His words carried the weight of 7 decades surveying land. Understanding boundaries. Recognizing when someone was moving invisible fences before physical ones followed. "What do you think she wants?" I asked. He didn't hesitate. "Your water rights? Maybe your shoreline? Maybe the whole lake, if she thinks she can argue community interest." He looked at me with sudden, fierce clarity. "Document everything. Walter. They'll twist whatever you don't write down." That night, I spread all 7 violation notices across the kitchen table, analyzing them with the methodical precision I'd learned during 40 years as a dam engineer. Each notice cited different HOA covenants. Each one referenced community safety without defining actual hazards. Each accusation was designed to create a record of problematic behavior without providing evidence of actual problems. This wasn't harassment. This was strategy. Someone, Catherine Blackwell, was building a documented history of safety concerns that could later be used to argue my ranch operations endangered the community. And if she could establish that argument convincingly enough, she might be able to convince county officials that expanded HOA jurisdiction was necessary for public safety. But she couldn't do that without manufacturing violations first, which is exactly what she'd been doing for 11 days. I pulled out my grandfather's old deed box, steel and dented, containing every document related to Whitetail Lake since 1947, water rights registrations, dam construction permits, survey maps with hand-drawn elevation marks, engineering reports from every decade since my family built the irrigation system. Everything was in perfect order. The HOA had no legal ground for jurisdiction over my property, but if Catherine created enough false noise, enough complaints, enough violations, enough manufactured concern, she might be able to sway county bureaucrats who wouldn't take time to verify the underlying claims. The legal war she was starting wouldn't be fought with facts. It would be fought with narrative. And she'd already started writing hers before I'd even realized the fight had begun. The question now wasn't whether Catherine would escalate, it was how far she'd go before someone stopped her. And standing there in my kitchen at midnight, staring at 7 pieces of paper that represented 7 calculated attacks on my family's property, I realized something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't about irrigation valves or lake maintenance anymore. This was about whether my grandfather's 77-year legacy could be stolen through paperwork and lies. Catherine Blackwell was betting it could, and she'd just made her first serious mistake. She'd given me 11 days to figure out what she was really after. Now it was time to find out exactly how she planned to take it. The escalation came exactly when my father predicted it would. Quietly, at first, then all at once. 2 days after the deputies left, I found Catherine standing at the ridge overlook above my property with a surveyor's tripod and a man in a reflective vest I didn't recognize. They weren't hiding. In fact, they seemed to want me to see them. Standing in full view, while the surveyor adjusted his scope to point directly at my shoreline. Professional equipment, careful measurements, official-looking documentation, everything designed to look legitimate. I drove my truck up the access road to where they stood, just beyond my property line on county land where I couldn't legally stop them. The surveyor kept working, but Catherine turned to face me with that confident smile that suggested she'd been expecting, maybe even hoping for this confrontation. "Morning, Walter," she said. her tone pleasant, but carrying an edge of satisfaction. Just conducting some preliminary assessments. Assessments of what I asked. Keeping my voice level. Shoreline stability. She replied smoothly. The HOA board has concerns about water flow affecting community infrastructure. We're gathering data for our environmental consultant. Your consultant doesn't have authority to survey my property. She tilted her head slightly. And I noticed for the first time what she was wearing. That crimson-red blazer she seemed to favor for official HOA business. Paired with a black silk top and pencil skirt that looked more appropriate for a corporate boardroom than a Montana ranch. Her wine-brown hair was pulled back in loose waves, and her red-glossed lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "We're not on your property," she said. "We're on county access land, conducting measurements that affect community safety. Perfectly legal. Measurements of my shoreline from land you don't own. Preparing a report about property you don't control." I replied, "That's not safety assessment. That's reconnaissance." The surveyor looked uncomfortable but kept working. Catherine's expression didn't change. But something flickered behind her eyes calculation. Maybe? Or the recognition that I understood exactly what she was doing. "Walter? I don't know why you insist on being so adversarial," she said, adopting a tone of patient disappointment. "The HOA is simply trying to protect everyone's property values. If there are legitimate concerns about shoreline stability, there aren't." I interrupted. "That lake has been stable for 77 years. You know it. I know it. And whatever report you're planning to manufacture won't change that fact." She stepped closer, lowering her voice like we were sharing confidences. "You're one man with an aging infrastructure and outdated equipment. We're a governing body with legal authority to ensure community safety. You really want to fight us on this? I don't want to fight anyone." I said, "But I will defend what's mine." She smiled, then a genuine smile that somehow felt more threatening than her earlier professional facade. "Everything thinks it's theirs, until someone else proves otherwise." Then she walked back to the surveyor, leaving me standing there with the unmistakable feeling that I'd just been threatened in the politest possible way. That evening, I called Rebecca Santos, the best land rights attorney in Montana and someone I'd known since she handled my father's estate planning 5 years ago. She listened without interrupting as I explained the violation notices, the false complaints, and Catherine's survey operation. "Walter," she said, when I finished, "what you're describing is a systematic attempt to establish jurisdiction over property the HOA doesn't control. The survey is particularly concerning that suggests they're preparing a formal claim of some kind. Claim to what? Probably expanded HOA authority based on environmental or safety concerns," she explained. "If they can document enough hazardous conditions, they might try to argue that county oversight is necessary for community protection. And once the county gets involved, the HOA inserts themselves as stakeholders." I finished. As a dam engineer, I'd seen similar jurisdiction battles play out with water districts and municipal government. Exactly. Rebecca confirmed. And Walter, that survey they're conducting get me photos of their equipment, their vehicles, any documentation they're carrying. If they're building a case, we need to build ours faster. Over the next 3 days, I documented everything. Photographs of Catherine and her surveyor taking measurements of my shoreline from 4 different positions. Video of them discussing water table concerns and structural instability despite having no engineering credentials to make such assessments. Time-stamped images showing the same equipment returning to the ridge on 3 consecutive mornings. But it was what I found in the county land office that changed everything. On day 14, I drove to the Stillwater County Courthouse to verify my property boundaries against official records. The clerk, a woman named Margaret who'd worked there for 30 years, pulled the relevant files without hesitation. "Here's your grandfather's original survey from 1947, she said, spreading the yellow document across the counter. "Water rights registered. Boundaries clearly marked. No encumbrances or easements." "What about recent filings?" I asked. "Has anyone submitted anything related to my property in the past few months?" Margaret paused, her expression shifting to concern. "Actually, yes. There's a preliminary boundary inquiry filed 3 weeks ago." She pulled another document. "Catherine Blackwell, representing Ridgemont Estates HOA, requesting clarification on historical high water marks for environmental assessment purposes." My stomach tightened. Environmental assessment, that's what it says. She's arguing that historical lake expansion might affect current property boundaries. Margaret looked at me over her reading glasses. "Walter? This filing includes a sketch map showing a proposed high water mark about 300 feet beyond your current shoreline right into your ranch property." She turned the document so I could see it. Someone had drawn a false boundary in red ink, claiming the lake at its historical maximum had extended far into what was clearly dry land. If that false claim were accepted, it would place my irrigation system, my dock, and part of my grazing pasture inside a disputed environmental zone subject to community oversight. "This is fraud," I said flatly. "I flagged it as questionable." Margaret replied, "The elevation data doesn't match any historical surveys I have on file." "But Walter, she filed this before she started sending you violation notices." The timeline snapped into focus with devastating clarity. Catherine hadn't responded to concerns about my property. She'd manufactured the concerns after deciding to claim my shoreline. "Can I get copies of everything?" I asked. "Already printing them." Margaret said, "That night, I spread the false boundary map across my kitchen table next to my grandfather's original survey. The differences were glaring elevations that didn't match topography, watermarks that couldn't have existed without flooding that never occurred, boundary lines drawn to support a conclusion rather than reflect reality." My father wandered into the kitchen, looked at the documents, and said with sudden clarity, "She's not measuring what's there. She's drawing what she wants. She filed this 3 weeks ago." I said, "Before the first violation notice? Before any complaints. She'd already decided to claim the shoreline before she started building the justification." He nodded slowly. "Then you need to prove she's lying before the county accepts her lie as truth." He was right, but proving fraud required more than just showing my documents were legitimate. I needed to expose her strategy completely enough that no one could claim she'd made an honest mistake. The opportunity came 2 days later when Catherine made her biggest tactical error. She called an emergency HOA meeting to discuss concerning developments at the Harrison Ranch requiring immediate community action. I wasn't invited, but Bill Henderson was, and he called me immediately afterward. "Walter, you need to hear this," he said, his voice tight with anger. "Catherine stood up there with photographs of your shoreline and told everyone your lake operations are creating environmental hazards that could affect property values throughout Ridgemont Estates. She said the HOA needs to establish authority over your shoreline for community protection." Did anyone challenge her? A few people asked for evidence. She showed them that fake boundary map, claimed it was based on historical records, and said engineers confirmed your irrigation system violates modern safety standards. He paused. Walter. She's telling people the county is already reviewing the situation and will likely require HOA oversight. The county isn't reviewing anything. I said. She filed a fraudulent document hoping no one would verify it. I know that. But half the room believed her because she sounded official and confident. By the end of the meeting, the board voted to pursue formal jurisdiction clarification over the disputed shoreline area. Disputed shoreline. My property had become disputed through nothing more than Catherine's systematic lies. Bill, I need you to do something for me. I said, can you get a copy of whatever materials she showed at that meeting? Already took photos. He replied, figured you'd need them. The images arrived within the hour. Catherine's presentation included the false boundary map. Photographs of my irrigation system deliberately framed to look unstable. And a quote from an unnamed environmental consultant claiming my lake operations pose significant risks to community water resources. But she'd made one critical mistake. In one slide, she'd included a notation. Phase 1, establish safety concerns. Phase 2, county jurisdiction review. Phase 3, shoreline acquisition for community use. She'd literally documented her 3-phase plan to steal my lake. And she'd shown it to 70 homeowners in a recorded HOA meeting. I called Rebecca immediately. I have proof she's been planning this from the beginning. Written documentation of her strategy to manufacture jurisdiction over my property. Send me everything. Rebecca said, Walter, this isn't a property dispute anymore. This is fraud. Possibly criminal fraud. We need to move fast. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood at the edge of Whitetail Lake, where my grandfather had built the dam 77 years ago. Watching moonlight shimmer across water that had sustained 3 generations of my family. Behind me, the ranch house where my children were sleeping. Ahead, the false accusations and manufactured crisis designed to steal what my grandfather had built. Catherine Blackwell had spent 3 weeks constructing her attack carefully, methodically, believing she could rewrite history through confidence and falsified documents. But she'd made one fatal miscalculation. She'd assumed I wouldn't fight back. Tomorrow, I'd prove her wrong. Tomorrow, the war she'd started would turn against her. And tomorrow, she'd learn that some boundaries can't be moved, no matter how official the lies sound when spoken with authority. The old surveying level sat in my truck bed. The same instrument my grandfather had used in 1947. Time to show everyone what the real elevation markers said. Time to show Catherine Blackwell that truth has weight, lies can't overcome. The war was about to shift, and this time, I'd be the one doing the surveying. The next morning, I did exactly what my grandfather would have done. I verified every boundary marker on my property with professional precision, not because I needed to prove the boundaries to myself, but because I needed documentation that would withstand scrutiny when Catherine's false claims reached official channels. By noon, I had GPS coordinates for every survey stake. Elevation measurements matching the 1947 records exactly. And photographic evidence showing the markers hadn't moved an inch in 77 years. Then I called the one person who could stop Catherine's fraud cold, County Water Authority Director Sarah Chen. The woman who'd approved every dam inspection I'd conducted over 40 years. Walter, I heard rumors about HOA trouble at your place. Sarah said when she answered, Please tell me Catherine Blackwell hasn't dragged you into one of her jurisdiction battles? You know her. She's tried this twice before with other properties. Makes safety claims. Manufactures environmental concerns. Tries to expand HOA control through manufactured crisis. Sarah's voice hardened. What's she claiming this time? That my lake operations are hazardous and the shoreline needs HOA oversight for community protection. She's filed a false boundary map with the county showing historical high water marks that never existed. Silence. Then send me everything you have, every document, every photo, every piece of evidence. If she's falsified county records, that's beyond civil dispute. That's criminal fraud within 2 hours. I'd transmitted the complete file to Sarah's office. The response came faster than I'd expected, a formal notice that the County Water Authority was initiating a technical review of all claims related to Whitetail Lake, and that all parties would be required to appear at an official hearing with documented evidence. Catherine received the same notice. I know because she called me 30 minutes later. Her voice tight with barely controlled anger. You went over my head to the Water Authority, she said. You're making this so much harder on yourself. Walter, the HOA has legal standing. No, you don't. I interrupted. And tomorrow at 2 o'clock, you're going to have to prove every claim you've made in front of county engineers who actually understand water systems. Bring your evidence. Catherine, all of it. She hung up without responding. That evening, Rebecca arrived at my ranch with a leather briefcase full of legal documentation. I've been reviewing Montana water law and HOA jurisdiction statutes. Walter, if you can prove she knowingly filed false boundary claims, she's not just losing an HOA dispute, she's facing criminal charges for submitting fraudulent documents to county offices. I have proof. I said, spreading Catherine's fake map next to my grandfather's legitimate survey. Every elevation she claimed is impossible. The high water marks she drew would require flooding that never occurred. And her own meeting notes document this was planned before any safety concerns existed. Rebecca studied the evidence with the focused intensity of an attorney who just found the winning argument. This isn't just fraud. This is conspiracy to commit fraud. She documented her 3-phase plan to manufacture jurisdiction so she could acquire your shoreline. For what purpose? Property values. Rebecca said simply, if the HOA controls lakefront access, she can market Ridgemont Estates as a waterfront community. That triples home values overnight. She's not after safety, she's after money. The next afternoon, the County Water Authority hearing room was packed. Catherine sat at one table with 3 HOA board members, all dressed in business attire that suggested they'd prepared for a formal presentation. Rebecca and I sat across from them with our boxes of evidence. And at the head table, Sarah Chen presided with 2 senior engineers who'd reviewed both sets of documentation. This hearing addresses claims that Whitetail Lake operations pose community safety risks and that historical boundary disputes require HOA jurisdiction clarification. Sarah began. Mrs. Blackwell, present your evidence. Catherine stood, and I noticed she'd chosen that same crimson blazer and black silk top combination. Her appearance polished and professional. But when she started speaking, the confidence in her voice couldn't mask the weakness of her case. The HOA has documented multiple safety violations at the Harrison Ranch, she said, holding up the stack of violation notices I'd received. equipment operation without permits, hazardous water flow conditions, and structural instability that threatens community infrastructure. What permits are required? One of the engineers asked. Catherine hesitated. Standard county permits for industrial water operations. Mr. Harrison's irrigation system is agricultural, not industrial. The engineer interrupted. Agricultural water use doesn't require operational permits. What structural instability are you referencing? She pulled out photographs of my irrigation valve. This outdated equipment hasn't been inspected in decades. Actually, I interrupted. It's inspected annually by the County Water Authority. I can provide certification documents from every year since 1976. Sarah nodded. Our records confirm that. Continue. Mrs. Blackwell. Catherine's presentation deteriorated from there. Each claim she made was contradicted by documentation I provided. Each photograph she showed was countered by professional engineering reports proving safety and stability. By the time she presented her falsified boundary map, the engineers were already exchanging skeptical glances. This map shows historical high water marks, Catherine said, pointing to the red lines she'd drawn. Based on environmental assessments. Based on what environmental assessments? Sarah asked sharply. Who conducted them? Our consultant reviewed historical. Name the consultant? Sarah demanded. Provide their credentials. Show us the methodology used to determine these elevations. Catherine froze. The documentation is being finalized. There is no documentation, I said, standing up. Because there was no legitimate assessment, I placed my grandfather's original survey on the overhead projector. This is the 1947 boundary survey showing actual elevation marks. The high water mark has never exceeded 712.3 feet. Then I overlaid Catherine's false map. Her version claims a high water mark of 715.7 feet, more than 3 feet higher. For that to be accurate, Whitetail Lake would have had to flood an area that sits above the water table, physically impossible without rainfall that never occurred according to 77 years of weather records. One of the engineers leaned forward. Mrs. Blackwell, did you personally verify these elevations? My consultant. Do you have a consultant? He pressed. The silence that followed was devastating. Catherine's expression shifted through several emotions. Anger, panic, calculation, before settling on desperate defiance. The HOA acted in good faith based on community concerns. She said, if there were errors in preliminary documentation, these aren't errors. Rebecca interrupted. This is falsification. She placed Bill Henderson's photos of the HOA meeting on the table. Your own presentation to homeowners documents a 3-phase plan established safety concerns. Trigger county review. And acquire the Harrison shoreline for community use. You didn't respond to safety issues. You manufactured them to support a planned acquisition. Catherine's face went pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. That's taken out of context. The context is fraud, Sarah said coldly. You filed false documents with county offices. You submitted fabricated elevation data. You manufactured safety violations to create justification for a land grab you'd already planned. She looked at the other engineers. Recommendation: all HOA claims dismissed. The first engineer said, Harrison, property boundaries confirmed. No safety violations found. Refer falsified documents to the county attorney for investigation. The second engineer nodded agreement. Additionally, recommend temporary restraining order, preventing further HOA action against Harrison property pending legal review. Sarah brought down her gavel. So, ordered. Mrs. Blackwell, you are hereby barred from filing any further complaints, violations, or jurisdiction claims related to Whitetail Lake. Your falsified boundary documents have been referred to law enforcement for criminal investigation. Catherine stood frozen, her red heels rooted to the floor as the reality crashed down around her. The HOA board members who'd flanked her moments ago were quietly gathering their things, distancing themselves from the wreckage of her scheme. This isn't over, she whispered. But the words carried no weight anymore. Yes, I said quietly. It is. 3 weeks later, the county attorney filed charges of criminal fraud for falsifying county documents, attempted theft by deception for trying to acquire property through manufactured claims, and misuse of HOA authority. Catherine resigned as HOA president the day the charges were announced. The Ridgemont Estates HOA board underwent complete reorganization. The new president, a retired engineer named Thomas Burke, apologized publicly for Catherine's actions and assured residents the HOA would respect property boundaries and operate transparently. Bill Henderson stopped by my ranch on a cold January evening when the lake was frozen and peaceful under Montana stars. "You saved more than your own property," he said. Catherine was planning to try the same thing with 3 other ranches bordering the development. You stopped her before she could. I looked out at the ice-covered lake my grandfather had created, the land my family had protected for 3 generations. Sometimes all you can do is stand your ground and prove the truth. My father, having one of his increasingly rare moments of complete clarity, joined us on the porch. "Land doesn't lie," he said. "Maps don't lie. Only people lie. And truth always weighs more than lies." Eventually, by spring, when the ice melted and Whitetail Lake returned to its natural rhythm, the legal battles were finished. Catherine pleaded guilty to reduced charges, paid restitution, and left Montana entirely. My ranch stood exactly where it had always stood, protected by deeds that didn't lie, boundaries that hadn't moved, and a truth that no amount of manufactured violations could overcome. Emma and Daniel helped me repair the old irrigation valve that had started everything. The same valve my grandfather had installed 77 years ago. As we worked, I thought about how close Catherine had come to stealing land through nothing more than confidence and false paperwork. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd attacked someone who understood the difference between claims and evidence, between authority and truth. Some boundaries can't be moved. Some truths can't be buried. And some lies, no matter how official they sound when wrapped in HOA letterhead and spoken with crimson blazer confidence, eventually collapse under the weight of reality. Whitetail Lake kept flowing. My grandfather's dam kept standing, and the land remembered what people tried to forget, that ownership isn't about who sounds most official, it's about who has the truth written in 77 years of records no liar can erase.